Cool.
Um, okay, so here we go. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, so, all right, so let's get started. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Today I have Christopher Gunlock with me on this podcast episode. So just a little information about Christopher. Christopher Gunlock works full-time as a psychedelic integration coach, community educator, and organizer. His platform is openmindintegration.com, where he offers psychedelic preparation and integration services from a harm reduction perspective. He's been exploring and integrating psychedelics like psilocybin, LSD, DMT, 5-MeO, DMT, and ketamine for 15 years. He served for 2 years as executive director at the Psychedelic Society of Minnesota, where he acted as public representative, lead event organizer, media director, and hosted hundreds of hours of integration circles. He also helped lead the Global Psychedelic Society group during that time. He holds a master's in health sciences and integrative medicine from the George Washington University School of Medicine, with coursework in functional medicine, nutrition, and metabolomics. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Mind-body medicine and endocrinology. At Maharishi International University, he received his BS bachelor's in mathematics, where he trained in Vedic philosophy, traditional medicine, and advanced transcendental meditation. He also completed a 1 year of training and volunteering for the Fireside Psychedelic peer support line. So Christopher helps people at major transition points in their lives who are using psychedelics or similar catalysts to bring intention to the new identity that results. This brings harmony and destructive cycles, bad habits, automatic thinking, or a general sense of purposelessness. So it brings harmony to destructive cycles. He also commonly supports those going through spiritual emergencies, spiritual emergence, which is often brought on by psychedelics. And that's one of the things I really want to talk about. Integration is a process by which we create harmony between the expanded awareness states and the material aspects of our lives, such as health, work, relationships, and environment. So Christopher offers private coaching on and hosts regular workshops on plant medicines, ceremonies, and discussion groups. So hope I got all that right. So
That's wonderful. Thank you.
So all right, so Christopher, so first of all, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate and I love what you're doing, man. Like, this is I think more and more people are, because of the emergence of popularity of psychedelics, and especially the study of psilocybin, and basically with Jordan Peterson talking about it, and Michael Pollan, and everybody's talking about psychedelics these days. And so I think that a lot of people are going into these spiritual states
Spirit
to treat their depression, but having these awakenings. And I think that for the work that I do, to me, the spiritual realm is not something that we kind of tamper with. It's not something like psilocybin to treat depression. It's really kind of like you're accessing. To me, it's you're taking psychedelics to access the spirit realm, to get information to how to fix your life, work on your life, and then start taking actions on that information. And I think that without, and this is not just psychedelics, this is just meditation, yoga, Qigong, Tai Chi, any form of spiritual practice that allows people to kind of tap in. So so first of all, let's go into so what is an integration coach, and what got you into it?
Sure. I started out actually thinking I was just going to do like regular health coaching with more of a specialist in nutrition and metabolism. Yeah, that was my integrative medicine program that I was in for my master's program. And so it started out like wanting to just help folks with basic health issues. Is it something that I went through myself, finding out where the deficiencies in the mainstream healthcare system were, and seeing that there's a lack of this more holistic approach. And but at the same time, it was around like 2016, 17 that the Johns Hopkins University was publishing papers on psychedelics. There was, several mainstream institutions and academic journals that were publishing, and the word was getting out, and it wasn't just, kind of more esoteric realms of academia. It was mainstream, and it was also hitting the news. Yeah, folks were finding out about the connections and the evidence for, our pathologies of depression, anxiety, PTSD, and things like that. But also, the natural medicines like ayahuasca had been gaining some popularity. The retreats that people are going to out of the country, treating all kinds of things. So when I was starting this health coaching thing, I started to find that the reasons behind people's health issues, particularly the chronic health issues, either mental health, chronic like inflammation of all kinds, gut deficiencies, big one, energy deficiencies. The reasons behind, like the further you dig into that, the more you see that it's not just like telling a person, oh, you need to stop eating this and start eating that, or like stop doing this, start doing this, because our lives are just interwoven. They're these webs of connections that one thing leads to another, and the habits and the lifestyle that we end up with is the result of some much more core process going on. It could be just a belief system. It could be your way of coping with stress, or trauma coping mechanisms. I mean, a lot of it is our egoic identity, the way we construct ourselves, the way we want to be seen in the world, the way we want to be distinguished in the world. And so it became kind of frustrating, actually, to think about, all right, well, how am I going to like coach people into a better lifestyle if their entire mindset, perception of the world is tied to these bad habits that cause their symptoms. And I had been spending my entire adult life using psychedelics on my own, but it was always kind of just this little secret I had that very select people I would talk to about. And so when I was in my master's program, I started bringing it up and, showing, referencing some of the papers that have been published. And to my surprise, it was very well received. A lot of my classmates were doctors and nurses, and they were not only interested, but they were like, somewhat even knowledgeable about what has been discovered in mainstream science. And so gradually my health coaching business just turned into integration coaching, psychedelic integration coaching, because that was not only more what I was interested in, but it also seemed to just fit what more people were looking for, and also just kind of what's more at the root of the issues. And in general, though, integration, it's not just with psychedelics, right? So many of us, we access these states of consciousness, these realms of non-material reality that have an effect on us. They're part of us. And so integration is simply bringing more harmony between those other layers of us beyond our physical form with the physical, weaving together the meaningful aspects and the intelligence, the wisdom that can come from having these expanded levels of awareness, and making it work. A lot of it is just practical. Like, if you're using psychedelics, how's your health? How's your body? How's your mental health? Do you have a career that you're passionate about, and is in alignment with your needs? Are your relationships healthy? Do you have a home that is supportive of your needs, and not causing destructive kind of toxic exposures? So if you're using psychedelics or using some other form of expanded awareness, but those things are all out of whack, then chances are there's an integration problem. So I kind of help people hone in on where that is, and start bringing a little bit of mindfulness, accountability, more responsibility to that. Yeah.
It's great. So as far as like, so let's talk about, let's go here first. So what are some of the psychedelics that you have taken, and what is the difference between each one? And yeah, let's go with that first.
Sure. Yeah, that's a big question, and I like that it is, because the world of psychedelics is much more than just acid and mushrooms. Like it's really a fantastic whole group of plants and fungi and even animals, and frankly even part of our endogenous chemistry, DMT being one of the notable ones that have been detected in the human body, and really shares many of the same qualities as our neurotransmitters like serotonin. So psychedelics are everywhere. And the more I discover, the more I experience them, the more I see each of them serves its own purpose and fits in this bigger puzzle of this idea of psychedelics or entheogens, or however you want to call it. So yeah, I guess I can just start with some of the classics, the ones that people have heard of more. And so psilocybin mushrooms, probably the most recognizable, the one that most people have tried if they haven't tried any psychedelics. It's yeah, I guess in that sense, that's kind of its main distinguishing quality, is that it is common, and for good reason too. It's generally the most gentle. It's the side effects profile is very low. The toxicity profile very low. It interacts with other drugs fairly well. So it's more difficult to go wrong with it. It's very low, even in the realm of like illicit substances. As far as the way law enforcement views it, it's the lowest priority. They really don't care a whole lot about mushrooms compared to your other drugs of abuse. So those are some of the main distinguishing qualities. But when I talk to people about mushrooms with my integration coaching, more often the topic is, what are these lessons? What are these mushrooms showing people? Why is it that we go through certain thought processes in that state of mind, whereas like LSD, for example, very different story. People have very different kinds of content that comes up, different inspirations, and they're left with a different impact on their life afterwards. So that's kind of the other distinguishing quality that I would say that psilocybin mushrooms have, is there's this way of it showing you some of the more difficult truths about yourself. Often people see that something that they're doing, like a pattern in their life that leads to maybe some sort of destructive outcome, like a relationship pattern. Like I keep getting involved in these relationships, and it's like codependent or it's abusive or whatever. And the mushrooms have a way of bringing this like big picture lens to it, where you see, oh, I'm like, my actions, my perceptions, my beliefs, my way of just of identifying with, like, for example, relationships is the part that is like perpetuating it. And so it makes it both really difficult to see that, but also really clear if you wanted to change it, if you wanted to rearrange how you are, like what that relationship is to you. And so it gives you this chance to take a different direction. If you want to, you certainly don't have to. And that's kind of where the integration comes in, is after the experience itself, like the next day, you're back to baseline, you're back in your world. And from there, you could just keep on going. You could just keep doing what you've been doing. You could just forget that mushroom experience happened altogether. Or you could take those lessons very seriously. You can start putting into action what it's maybe showing you you could do better, or what you could do more harmoniously. Mushrooms are very effective at doing that, and it's just that they're also recreational too, in a sense, that some people are able to take them and kind of like push aside those lessons and just enjoy the kind of serotonergic trippiness of it. It's like this kind of blissful, happy feeling, playful. It's like you're a kid again, and everything, all the colors are trippy looking, and very, very exciting. And but in the right context and in the right dose range, yeah, those lessons are very hard to ignore. So yeah, that's what I would say is kind of special about mushrooms. LSD is a very different story, and I think probably one of the most misunderstood, especially in the realm of the sort of popular psychedelics. LSD, I think, is much more frivolously used, and for good reason though too. It's both its strength and its weakness, in the sense that it's easy. LSD is it's extremely potent. It has almost no side effects. It almost no contraindications. It doesn't taste bad. It's just a tiny thing you put on a piece of paper and just throw it in your mouth. I mean, you could even drop if you have liquid, you could put it on your skin and absorb it right in your body right there. It's like, it's almost difficult not to use it. So that is, very convenient in that there's a lot of ways you can, and there's a lot of flexibility. You can kind of take it anywhere, anytime, any place. But that's also the problem with it. When you go into the state of consciousness where you're like super opened up, and you're like you're absorbing everything that's around you, and the interaction between your consciousness and everything around you becomes really, really clear. You're exposed, you're vulnerable. And if you go into it not appreciating that, you could very easily walk out a different person and not the person that you really want to be. And that's the side that I try to talk about as much as I can in the realm of LSD, because those stories are not told very often. And again, I think for a good reason, because it's not the kind of thing you want to like go around announcing to the world, like, I took LSD, had a bad trip, and now I feel like shit. Like it's embarrassing, it's stigmatizing, it's illegal. So I'm here to tell you, like, I've spent a lot of time listening to people's stories. People come to me for that sort of thing, and I hear so often LSD, that one experience, like, I had an LSD trip and I've never been the same ever since. Like, it's unfortunately really common, and particularly with the bad trips, when people are taking it in a context that's not healthy, it's not supportive, it's unsafe, or even just like not having a good trip sitter. Like, you're tripping with a friend, but some weird dynamic goes on, and you get confused or scared, or something happens, and LSD is just going to magnify that, potentially a lot. So yeah, I think really underestimated that one. That's very, very powerful. But of course, if you use it in a beneficial way, it can have a really good effect too. And I guess another one I would talk about is DMT. That's one of the key ingredients in ayahuasca, but also you can extract it out of many, many different plants and even animals. And that's, again, the one that has been detected in human tissues and fluid. DMT is very important. It's the psychedelic of the earth. It's abundant. It's found in so many different places, and it's very, very powerful. It's considered one of the master plants in the Amazonian traditions for a good reason. It's the visionary experience. It's the spirit molecule. You see into the spirit world. You're seeing beyond the veil, all the filters that our ego puts in front of us, so that we're not distracted by all that stuff behind the scenes. Those filters are gone. You're seeing what's really there, and I mean, that's a point of contention. I'll admit that, there's a lot of people who have used DMT but are not really sold on the idea that it's actually real, and that, it's just a hallucination or whatever, or it's just your brain like just something in your brain happening rather than you're actually seeing the world. So, that's a choice. Like if you want to believe that, okay. But I think it's important to ask yourself, um, first of all, can you prove that?
Right.
How do you know for sure? And well, I don't think anyone does know for sure. There's no way to really measure that. There's no way to like test, is what you're seeing real? But anyone that's experienced it, you've probably seen some stuff that is hard to deny has some sort of like significance or meaning behind it, or at the very least there's an intelligence there. There's I mean, you're seeing geometric patterns and entities and things that even the best artists would never be able to fully recreate. So I think it's undeniably important. Whatever your conclusions are, it's up to you. But it's yeah, it's something to look into for sure. So yeah, there's a lot of other psychedelics out there. Some of them less common, like ketamine is kind of the hot one that's legal. It's being offered in clinics all over the world now, and it's not classically a psychedelic. It doesn't have the sort of tryptamine flavor to it of all the colors and the patterns and the things like that. It's more of like a journey, like a dream-like journey through your mind, and you get to really see deep into places inside your consciousness that you wouldn't normally. And it's a little bit more palatable too, I would say. I find people who have like pretty severe PTSD or anxiety handle that a little bit better than like psilocybin or especially like ayahuasca, like DMT. Those definitely have some prerequisites. So yeah, I think they're all really important. Don't underestimate how different they are too. So yeah, I mean, I can go on for that. I'll go on with that for a long time, but yeah, happy
Okay.
to open up the combo. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of like, well, the way it sounds, it sounds like DMT is kind of like, or DMT or ayahuasca, if it's found in everything. To me, I always consider it kind of like, if that's found in everything, then it's kind of like a source code.
Yeah,
Like,
maybe. I like that.
like, yeah, it's like we're all codes. Like, as far as I'm concerned, we're all information programs, kind of like the Matrix, where where everybody has their own programs. And I think that if it's DMT, if it flows through everything, if you're finding it everywhere, then it's the source code. It's kind of like a main building block or foundation of codes that we build upon from there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just interesting because it's like, when patients get acupuncture, when you've had acupuncture for me, and like it's a trippy experience. It's very psychedelic. And patients are having kind of like flashbacks on the table, and bodies twitching, things are moving, things are like leaving the body. So it's a very interesting. So to me, it's interesting, and that's yeah, especially that the DMT is found everywhere. Now,
Mhm.
as far as like what are some of the things that people should be mindful of if they decide to go into using any of these, and what should they prepare for, and what is an spiritual emergency? Can you kind of explain further? Can you kind of explain a little deeper onto some of those topics? Because I think from a Qigong first perspective and from meditation, I've been teaching Qigong for so long, and in all the different textbooks, the masters will mention like, oh, don't practice these techniques. And today, because I'm old school, I see all these YouTube videos about people practicing these advanced internal techniques. I'm just like, you guys are gonna go insane for practicing those techniques, because you're gonna open up the channels, leave the energy the wrong way, get energy stuck, and then now you're going to have a blissful, because you just access the divine. But if you can't clear that energy, you're going to stay stuck there, and you're not going to be grounded here on earth and not function well. So I find, so this happens in meditation, this happens in Qigong, this happens in Tai Chi. I know this happens in yoga. And I think that these are the topics that people aren't talking about, which I talk about. And it's not to like scare people. It's just like, hey, beware. This is actually, you shouldn't go down this route. And so as far as psychedelics, now psychedelics is kind of like, boom, you're 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 busting open some doors. So into the spirit realm, and so what are some of the things that what are some spiritual emergencies that you've seen firsthand or experienced, or and what are some of the things that people can do to kind of prevent it or to bring themselves back from it? um, Sorry,
Yeah,
big
right
loaded
on.
question.
Yeah, no, I love that you preface all that because it's unfortunately, yeah, really taboo to go this deep into any of these modalities. Um, Even psychedelics, which it seems to me, it's like it's only a matter of dose before you're going way beyond your
Yeah,
conventional experience of reality. That it would be obvious that if the normal rules do not apply anymore.
right.
But
Like there's personality changes. Like
yeah.
people get acupuncture from me, and there's personality changes. So it's
Mhm.
like for you to do for people to take, anyways. But go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're going.
There's like a superficial layer, and then there's like these deeper layers to I think all these disciplines. And it was actually a surprise to me that, talking to you about Qigong and acupuncture, Chinese medicine, that even in that realm of like Eastern medicines and philosophy, that there's this suppression of this understanding of how to work within those higher dimensions, those other realms of reality, and like even talking about it is like I don't know if we should. And
Mhm.
we could go on about the reasons why, why the system is kind of oppressive in that way, but um, at least starting to have that conversation, I think is the way to go either way. So yeah, what I've seen with psychedelics, you'd only have to go to a music festival to see the potential damage that can be caused. But um, yeah, I mean, you're in a state that is not tethered to just the physical world anymore. People are
Right.
operating um, beyond the veil and in the spiritual dimensions. And unfortunately, our culture is not really well versed in that. Our culture tends to not be appreciative and even be even abusive about the good things in life. We take things that have a lot of power in them, and then we use them in ways that are not so responsible. And psychedelics have definitely not been an exception to that. So um, a lot of folks are experiencing things they don't understand, especially coming from a conventional mindset of you grow up, you do what you're supposed to do, get a job and go to work and just buy a house, have kids, and that's it. Live your life pretty standard as a American consumer, and nothing more. Maybe you go to church on Sunday, but it's about as deep as it goes. And well, 5 grams of mushrooms later, you're probably going to be second guessing all of that. And that's like good case scenario if you're just left questioning. But a lot of folks are already hypersensitive. A lot of folks are already kind of like just on the edge of going past the veil and seeing what's beyond. And for some folks, it doesn't take any psychedelics. I think that's exactly what schizophrenia and bipolar are, is people who have already the natural propensity to see beyond. And unfortunately, I think schizophrenia is pathologized because it's so stressful to live that way. When you don't have an understanding of what it is you're experiencing, what it is you're seeing, all these connections that don't seem to be materially verifiable. Yeah, you're gonna feel a little crazy. You're gonna feel a little bit unstable, and especially if you have a chronic condition where you're just kind of always in that state, you're going to develop all kinds of health problems. I mean, that's an understatement. And so I think we mistakenly view these states of consciousness as innately bad, pathological. I think that's where this fear of psychosis comes from. And honestly, like I even talk about psychosis in less in a like it's a disease, but more of it's just it's just part of the spectrum of our experience, and and really an underappreciated one too, because a lot of what can be accomplished and is accomplished in other cultures, the shamanic disciplines, the spiritual leaders and doctors or medicine workers, that is the realm of psychosis is where they operate. It's just that they've been able to hone that into a healthy discipline, and there is a way, and they can do things that are very confusing to the conventional doctor, and so there's a lot of folks that are taking psychedelics and kind of blasting that open, that realm, and some of them just get like fully unplugged and don't know how to get back to it. Especially I think when you like travel somewhere. I get some folks, they come back from Peru or they come back from Mexico, and all of a sudden the normal stresses of life, just paying your bills, going to work, dealing with regular people, becomes this really difficult ordeal, and things start to get really messy, or another one of the common things I see is this sort of existentialism or even nihilism that can result from taking too many psychedelics. And because like if you're presented with all this extra information, these new connections, you have a choice to make. Do I take it seriously and try to integrate, try to make it work? Or there is always that choice of just saying, forget it.
Yep.
It's
Right.
meaningless. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
And
a meaningless. I'm out. Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna just check out of this.
Hmm.
I can't deal with it, or it just is, it's so jarring that I think even sometimes people just can't even control, like the blockages start to come on, the egoic barriers, and that's I think where you start to form these more nihilistic identities, and just sort of not caring, and that of course can be really harmful. So all kinds of things. The spiritual emergence, as you mentioned, some folks get this just automatically, but others, it's like a Kundalini meditation awakens it, or yeah, even an acupuncture session. Psychedelics can certainly do it, and same thing. You get really ungrounded, and all of a sudden, your friends and family think you're weird, and you can't go to work. It's like this really tricky balance. So ideally, one of the things I try to help people with, what I offer with the coaching, is the preparation process. Very, very, um, very underestimated. It's there's so much you can do to start the integration even before the experience. And frankly, I tell people that the journey, the trip or whatever, begins not when you take the substance, but the moment you decide you're going to do it.
Hmm.
You're
Yep.
in it.
Yep.
The changes, like, I mean, there probably even chemical changes happening, but
Yep.
at the very least, you're on the path towards this big shift, especially if you're
Yep.
coming from a very conventional mindset.
Yep.
Um, I can't
Yep.
tell you like how much more there is out there. Like it's silly to try to explain it, but like
No, I tried to like.
yeah,
Sorry, I'm
our
going to
regular
interrupt.
mindset is so far from the infinite universe out there. So there's so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. It's what I tell people. Like, the moment you decide to go on so say here's the day you decide to take a psychedelic or go on to a spiritual journey, or decide to, this is the date. Here's the day you decide. And in the moment you decide, it's kind of like all of these dates to unfold. And the moment you decide, this happens. Here, I decided that this is going to happen. And the moment you decide, this already happened in this day. And so this ripples into this day and ripples into the next days after. So it's just kind of like time sort of collapses on itself based upon the decision.
Yeah.
And then the spiritual experiences start to happen prior to that. So it's just like when people get acupuncture from me, or decide they kind of like do Qigong, it's like they make the decision and then they do the Qigong. But the moment they made the decision, they're already tapped into the ripple effect of starting that practice. So it's
Mm-hmm.
such a it's free will and time is such a yeah, it's such a
Yeah.
but
So I like to take people on that journey and offer them some resources, offer them some suggestions for beginning the practice. You know, just starting to take it more seriously is really kind of the overall goal of it. Because that's ultimately what is both gonna help reduce the potential harm of taking psychedelics, but also you'll get more out of it. The more serious you take it, the more you put in, the more you get out, and the integration process is going to be much easier. And because it ultimately could be the biggest challenge of your life, especially if you go real far out there. The further you go, the more you're going to have to integrate. And that's
yep,
another thing, another suggestion I have for folks is don't take more than you can integrate.
yeah,
You know, and that's
yeah,
a part of the process I help people go through is let's take a look at, you know, where's your life at? You know, do you have friends and family that are open to these kinds of ideas, or are they people that there might be some friction if you start having different kinds of conversations? Are they gonna, you know, make your life more difficult, or you know, how much wiggle room do you have to work with there? Are you in a job where it requires you to do things or to act in a certain way that would be contrary to this more expanded way of thinking?
hmm
All of these things are really important to consider, especially if you're thinking of taking a high dose or like really going deep, going down to Peru or something. Because you know some of those more indigenous traditional cultures, they don't have to worry as much about integration because they already live in a community where it's like perfectly normal to talk about spirits and entities and you know all that stuff. But you know, if most of us in these kind of more, I don't know, what's a way to describe the state of the modern condition, the conventional way of thinking? I don't know.
I don't know, but I think you're using the right words to point at what we're both talking about.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree. I think once you kind of get into once you undertake a process, once you decide to undergo into diving into deep understanding of self, whether it be through psychedelics or other means practices, qigong, meditation, yoga, whatever the case may be, or then yeah, you begin to change. And I think that what happens is there is an unveiling of, whoa, it's kind of like Adam and Eve where the scales fall from the eye and you're kind of like, whoa, oh shoot,
Mhm.
okay, so that's not me, this is me, but wait, who's me, who is this I? And it's like, and where do I go from here, and what the hell do I do with this? And and then you begin to, what my personal experience is like, you just, man, I just kind of became a hermit a little bit. Like I just
Mhm.
kind of started, like, people I couldn't be around. And there's nothing wrong with what people are doing. I just couldn't be around things that were um not in my vibration.
Mhm.
um People who weren't working on themselves, or and that's such judgmental to say, but it's kind of like, I'm trying to say it right, but it's kind of like not at same vibration, not working on yourself, not um,
Awareness.
yeah, that level of awareness and sort of pursuing growth, because you begin to become way more aware of what's going on. And I see the lies I tell myself, I see the stories I tell myself, and sometimes it's gut wrenching. And then trying to change but that's the thing, at least I see it. And then I'm like, well, okay, I kind of messed up on that. Let's pull back. So it's just a higher level of self-awareness um, that makes me really pursue change, because like, okay, this is the outcome I want in my life. Okay, well, if that's the case, then these identities or the aspects, these behaviors, these belief systems that I have about myself or about the world need to change in order for me to have this outcome.
Mhm.
And it's just like every day observing those belief systems pop up, plucking them away,
Mm.
and then and then bringing in the new belief system to say, nope, I want this. This is the outcome I want. These are the belief systems I have, must have, and habits I have to have in order to achieve this lifestyle that I want to achieve.
Mm.
So it's a daily process. And then as soon as I start to get to a place where like, all right, I'm almost there. And then all these old identities start to and habits start to come back up and creep up. And so
It
uh,
never ends. It
it
never
never
ends.
ends. And so I shut those guys up with cold showers and
Mm.
first thing in the morning, and just kind of like things I do to kind of shake myself out of it, or give myself acupuncture to stop those patterns that bring. Um, I think I talked about it, and you probably hear me talk about it all the time, which sounds like there's an ideal version of self, and then that I'm trying to aim for. And then every time I get closer to my ideal sense of self, these older ideals, these older identities start to kind of come back up to pull this version of me down.
Nice, yeah.
So it's a constant battle. Um,
Yeah, and I even think
so
that is the nature of why we exist here in these bodies in the first
mhm,
place, is to kind of initially forget what is that higher self, the God, the source, whatever, coming from that into these bodies. It's this illusion that we're separate, that we're singular, that we're just one perspective, two eyeballs seeing outside of a head. And then throughout our lives, we get these little glimpses. Oh, maybe there's something more. Maybe it's bigger. And then
yeah,
more and more we start to see, oh my God, okay. And
yeah,
it's, I think, this continuous process of seeing and then forgetting and then being reminded of it and then forgetting again, and just constantly going back and forth, bringing more and more of that higher intelligence into your life as possible, and until finally your body withers away and then you go back there anyway. So we're just on this journey, and so
yeah.
enjoy it. Let's try to enjoy it.
It's what's been shown to me is like we're here to learn all these different lessons and figure out who this I is, and then look at all the character flaws that we have, and then also look at the strengths that we have, and then to strengthen the strengths, to work on the flaws, because everything has light and dark, or light and shadow. And
Mm.
so because like for me, like I can sit and chill and meditate and be completely present and could be completely in the zone, and I can do it like that, and that's awesome for meditation. But when it comes to getting shit done, like,
Mhm.
like those things, they don't bother me. And so because I'm so present, and now it's like, and now I'm learning, now it's the other way. So I went from a state of being to now I'm, as far as my character development is going, I need to go to a state of doing, which is now I have to worry about all these different tasks that are in front of me, and my body is not used to that level of stress, that level of juggling multiple things at the same time. So I have to kind of strengthen my body for more resilience to the stressors. Hence why I do cold showers and jump into the lake and stress my body out in order for me to like build resilience um, to all these different stressors. And so now there's sort of this more resilience, and then now I can deal with more things and multitask. And whereas before I would just collapse, like if there was just like lots of things in front of me, I just like, nope, I shut down. So I'm yeah.
Yeah, I relate to that hard. Yeah. It's sometimes, especially with psychedelics, it's easy just to check out. I'm just not going to do the human thing anymore.
Mhm.
It's too difficult.
Yeah.
But obviously, uh, enough isolation and neglect of your human existence, it starts to wear down, and you could die, but that would be the end of it. You can't go back from that. So you might as well make the best of the time, this just little short time we have here, and discover who is this unique being and what can it do, what can we accomplish. And
Mhm.
that's often, unfortunately, especially the folks who've taken a lot of psychedelics, that's the main lesson is there is a reason to live this physical, material, limited existence. And it might seem difficult, but that's also kind of the beauty of it. And um, so finding a way is it's, yeah, it's not easy, but
Yeah.
it's worth it.
So great. So like so wow. So meaning kind of going back to try to answering one of the questions. So basically it's like, so worst case scenario, if people take psychedelics and they aren't working on themselves and integrating, then basically their kind of life kind of falls apart. There's personality changes and they're more nihilistic. And that's something we kind of want to avoid.
That's maybe even one of the better case scenarios, to be honest.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
What's the worst case scenario? Let's talk about that. If you're
sure. I'd say it depends on the substance. I was talking about LSD earlier, and LSD tends to make the ego bigger, and not in a way that it necessarily challenges itself. It's just expansion. Like LSD will just expand your sense of self into whatever container you put it in. And so that goes back to like if you're in a unhealthy situation when you're having an LSD experience, you're gonna change, and not in a good way after that. Um, so worst case scenario is, I think honestly, some of the terrible things that happened with the Manson family. It's one of the big kind of famous stories around LSD, but and if
you
people don't
can you
know,
go into
just
can you go a little bit about into
sure,
that?
sure, yeah. Charles Manson, he basically he created a cult of people and convinced them to commit murders and do terrible things to people. And LSD was a part of that, but he also had a way of getting into people's heads, and so you combine that with a drug like LSD, and then you've got the perfect mind control. It's I think the CIA, I think they know damn well what LSD is. They claim to have like ended that whole project MK Ultra thing, but you know, I think they know what it is, and they definitely did some terrible things with it. They ruined people's lives, made people believe in things that were totally not real, and just end up going off the deep end. And so yeah, that you can completely lose your mind if you do it in the wrong way, and I'm not shy about saying that. There was a time where I was very defensive about psychedelics like being bad,
Mm-hmm.
but since getting into this line of work and actually seeing what kind of damage has been caused, um, I think we need to be real about it, that these are not toys. This is not a game.
Mm-hmm.
This stuff is some of the most real that you can experience in life. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then I think the other side of that coin is DMT. Honestly, like psilocybin, by the way, is basically DMT with just a little bit extra tacked onto it, like molecular wise. DMT is really kind of the fundamental. It's the tryptamine. It's even more basic than serotonin. Serotonin, by the way, again, is just DMT with a little thing tacked onto it. Um, DMT will radically and very rapidly change your entire concept of reality. And um, I don't even know what worst case scenario actually. I mean, some of what I've seen firsthand is people losing touch with what is real, what is not real, because it makes you question so much. Like, okay, well, I've seen there's this entire realm where there's like entities, there's intense, like just more real than real colors and shapes, and like there's something there, but no one told me about it. No one talks about it. And it's denied, it's illegal, it's like stigmatized. So what's the deal? Is it real? Is it not? And then all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, you go to work and you start talking to people, and like things that were real before, now you're questioning that, and you're like, okay, is anything real?
Yep.
And that can very very quickly degrade a person's quality of life. And so I would say those are the two biggest examples, other than like just doing something really irresponsible, like driving a car while you're on DMT or something like that,
Yeah.
aside from those obvious situations.
Yeah.
And then like there's a couple like ayahuasca and ibogaine in particular have some very, very serious contraindications if you're on like an SSRI or something like that. There is a biochemical reaction that can occur that can stop your heart. It can be cardiotoxic. So there's some like physical dangers, but those are very rare compared to what I see more often.
Mm.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of, I mean, things that happen in Qigong and things that happen
Mhm.
in meditation too. It's like when, and this is the thing that I tell my students, because the students when they start practicing for a while, they start tapping into the divine and they start tapping into their guides and their intuition and start to hear insight and receive insight on how to kind of navigate their lives. And the thing is, I keep telling people, and people like, when you become a clear channel to the divine, become a clear channel to both light and dark. And it's not to like make people afraid. It's just like, that's just how it is. Like, you have these thoughts that come from light and you have these thoughts that come from the dark. And those thoughts like, oh, maybe I should drive off the cliff, or maybe I should, when you're um, when you're on the balcony or when you're on a high cliff, there's a part of you, sometimes thoughts will pop up like, oh, maybe I want to push this person down the cliff. Like, those thoughts aren't yours.
Yeah, they're getting
These,
in you.
yep. And that's when the darker forces show up and they start to kind of put these thoughts in your head. And that's the thing. It's like when we don't talk about the dark stuff, or I mean, more specifically, evil. I think that's, then I think that people aren't well aware or well versed that, oh, that's not me. I shouldn't punish myself for these thoughts, and that recognizing that these are the thoughts that are popping up, and I need to extract them. And it's one of the things that happens a lot with any spiritual practice, any spiritual cultivation. That's just not just psychedelics, but and so when some of my students, they get to this age, this phase, I call it the spiritual teenager. It's like when you know enough to know, and then you start to kind of like question the teacher or start to question the parents. And so some of my students, they start kind of like, they become more intuitive and like, they get pretty good. Like they start prophesizing things and intuiting this, manifesting this in their life. And then you start kind of getting cocky. And then I'm like, no, hold on. You got to test at that phase. That spiritual teenager phase that's when both light and dark speaks to the same channel. And you've got to start really discerning between light and dark, because the dark gets smarter every step of the way. The dark gets more, because in the beginning, they're just big and bad and scary looking things. And then as you get better, they start to put little whispers in of insecurities or doubt, or maybe that person's going to deceive me, or maybe this, or maybe that, because they're putting these
Start to
thoughts in your
trick
head.
you, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Play games with you.
the trickery gets pretty intense. And so, and I know it because I'm still working on this stuff. I'm human too. I'm still definitely affected by this stuff. And so that's why when I get my intuition kicks in, I always, I tell my students, like, who are at that level, like I triple check and quadruple check, meaning like as soon as I start getting insight, I'm like, all right, universe, if this is what you want me to do, I need to see it 3, 4, 5, 6 times in this external world, this physical world, make it manifest to let me know that I'm moving in the right direction. If that's what you want me to do, then make it manifest in a way that happens in this physical third dimensional realm that allows me to know that that's coming from you, and then I can take action. And so that's been working. And then lately, the game has changed, and so now I'm on a new territory. But anyway,
Yeah, there's so much to understand, and we're having to now create the narratives around that, because so much of the knowledge has been lost and suppressed, and it's part of our life. It never went away truly, obviously, it's always been there,
Right.
but yeah, so much to understand and share about that.
Yeah, it's just a deep process, and it's just a constant observation of self and constant purification of the thoughts that come through, and it's a lot of work.
Mm.
To be so vigilant. um, but so as far as um, so then there's the integration part, helping kind of people kind of integrate. And what's some of the advice that you give to people? What are some of the early warning signs that you give people, like, hey, if this happens, do this, or if this happens, do that, that you kind of see sort of as a span, as far as generalized, um, for people who go through the psychedelic experience and then afterwards? um, what are
Yeah, I
some?
would say like general stability is a big thing, because these states of consciousness are innately destabilizing. We're letting go of the control that we normally have on the conscious level, and opening up to the realms of chaos and randomness and abstraction. So coming back, if your life is not very well put together, you've got all kinds of stresses and obligations that you can't handle, or elements of your life that are inserting instability. Maybe it's your boss is a real asshole or something, or you've got a spouse that is always on your case about stuff and always kind of putting stuff on you. It can be internal, external, but coming back, if there's some overwhelm to areas of your life, it's important to slow down, to ease up, because there's a lot of inspiration that can come when you see beyond, but you've got to take it one step at a time. Like I can tell you from experience, I've been taking psychedelics very enthusiastically for about 15 or 17 years now. And I've done a very small fraction of what those experiences showed me. I've accomplished very, very little. And it wasn't for lack of trying, but it's just that hard. Like life is
Yeah.
is it's full of obstacles. I mean, that's the nature of this physical world, is limitation. It's all limitation. It's all an uphill battle. You got to work. You got to like be on your game there. And um so yeah, take it slow. Like again, don't take more than you can integrate. It's and find support. I guess that's probably the biggest thing, actually. Building community, finding a good network of people, like from like a therapeutic standpoint or even medical, or all supporting yourself in as many ways as you can. So connecting with people too, just being able to talk about it sometimes is a challenge. And so finding a good group, these integration groups, I host a lot of them on Open Mind Integration. There's psychedelic societies all over the country and all over the world. There are people doing this now, so it's a hell of a lot better than it used to be. But yeah, keep an eye out for the stability. That's really a huge one. It's very tempting to want to just go back there, like, oh, I'll just go back, go get more wisdom, right, and I'll be all right. But I promise you, it's not that easy. It's in fact probably more in your best interest to stop taking psychedelics more often than it is to take more. So the integration should always be the priority, rather than the excitement of the experience, the newness of it. Because yeah, it's pure novelty, but that doesn't really get you anywhere. Again, I can tell you from many years of doing it myself, uh, the only way I actually like got somewhere in life, or like started to live more of the way I want to live was through just doing what everybody else does, like work, relationships, your health, like the basics. So it all comes back to that eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the thing with spirituality too. A lot of people use spirituality as a form of escapism. Um,
Mhm.
and they do meditation, and they do the qigong, and they do, and it's just kind of like, well, I'm doing all my practices. And I was like, yeah, 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 but can you feed yourself? Can you,
Mhm.
right? Can you, yeah, how's your relationships? What's your health looking like? And
Yeah.
I think that I think that being able to keep everything kind of well-rounded allows you to stay balanced. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's a whole lot of crossover, because I think psychedelics and spirituality it's the same. I think that, and a lot of people are, um, when you access the spirit realm or tap into the divine, you get information to improve your life, and you start taking actions to improve your life versus using it as a form of escapism.
Mhm.
And this is the thing that I keep pushing and trying to get people to understand, is my students to understand anyway. So no, is there any, how are you with time?
Yeah, I better wrap up.
Sounds
So
good.
yeah, this
So
is this is fun though. Yeah, I appreciate the combo.
yeah, no, this is great stuff. These are the topics and this the discussions I really want to have, because I think that you know giving people like, hey, there's good stuff, and hey, beware, because you can go down this rat this these rabbit holes, and down this route, and it can get a little crazy. So for people to kind of stay, not to be afraid, but to be educated and informed prior for them to do anything. So you hear me joke about it, like, oh yeah, local Grandma Terry can have a tap into the divine doing yoga at the local Y, and it's true. I have people kind of like, I just did a simple yoga class for the first time, and all of a sudden, like, all these things happen, all these energies moved up, and started having flashbacks or whatever the case may be. And that's sort of like you said, sort of a deep spiritual emergence. So all right, well, thank you, Christopher, for talking. Always great. Love these
Yeah.
conversations. And then I think, yeah, if you're down to do more, we can do more, talk about different topics or specific things you come across. And I think really just kind of educating folks on things to kind of prepare for as we're going to start moving down this route. Because I think, so quick question, where do you think psychedelics is going to be in the next 3 to 5 years or so? And then kind of
Mm.
maybe end it up there.
Uh, Man, I would think about that a lot, but it's changing so fast. It's hard to know. I can safely say that the growth will be exponential, both in terms of like the conventional realm, of clinical medicine and mainstream treatments and things like that. It's going to explode. It will be $1 billion industry very quickly. You're going to see psilocybin everywhere, but that side of it will be pretty divorced from the spiritual awareness and the more expanded understanding of what integration means. And so I think that's going to bring with it a lot of problems.
I think so
Um,
too.
but
Yeah.
then on the other end too, the traditional medicines, indigenous, the folks who are using it more in a holistic context, that's going to expand too. And I think this awakening of our consciousness is going to be I don't know. I mean, that's going to change everything potentially. I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of what they talk about, the big awakening, and psychedelics will be a part of that. Who knows what will happen? I mean, things will change rapidly. I think the main thing is that to make it through these coming times, the ability to adapt and change and grow and evolve will be the decider of who can kind of keep up with things, because it's going to change so fast. So
Yeah. I'm scared because I see the spirit realm, without and psychedelics. I'm scared for what's about to happen. I really am. I think people are going to blast off. I think people are going to tap into spirit, into into the spirit realm and tap into spirits and darker forces, and I'll just say it, demons and other things that they're going to run into. And I think that they're going to go in for the sake of treating depression, when really it's going to blast them off into the spirit realm, and they're going to get lessons on how to improve themselves and heal and work on themselves. And at the end of it is character development. Like I keep seeing it, like if you're going to take this stuff, it's to help with your character development. Who are you becoming, and are you the best version of yourself? And are you striving for that? Because if you're not, if you're just going to use psychedelics for the sake of treating symptoms, you're not going to get any better. You got to be a better person. And I think that's the thing with psychedelics and spiritual development and all these other practices, that tap into all of that. So I think it's going to get really messed up. Wild West. I think a lot of people are going to get hurt in the process. And then I think that once enough people get hurt, and once we see enough damage in the spirit realm, and then people are going to be like, okay, maybe we should talk to the people who know about this, people who know the spirit realm, and then let's not tamper it, because this is something that's sacred. But all right, so
it goes that way with humans.
Sorry, went off on my tangent. All right, so thank you for your time, Christopher. I really appreciate you coming on, and then looking forward to doing maybe another one sometime in the near future, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these are important combos. So yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
And then how can people reach you again?
Oh, sure. Yeah. My website, openmindintegration.com, everything's posted there. I do a lot of events, workshops, classes, some plant medicine ceremonies, the legal ones will be on there, and then the coaching services as well. So Instagram's the only real social media I do. Other than that, sign up for my newsletter. That's where you'll hear about everything first. So.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. And I'll put all your content in the video for YouTube and whatnot. So if anybody wants to get to reach out and get a hold of Christopher, please do so. So yeah, we're on the same page as far as a lot of this, because when you're speaking the truth is the truth. So that's sort of delineate, and we can have our own views or perspectives on the truth, but the truth is still the truth. So I think that everything we're talking about correlates and parallels very well. So. Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Peng. I'll see you later.
I'll see you.